Showgirls is a 1995 erotic pulp noir comedy drama film directed by Paul Verhoeven and written by Joe Eszterhas. The film stars Elizabeth Berkley, MacLachlan, Gina Gershon, Plummer, Robert Davi, Rachins, and Gina Ravera. Produced on a then sizable budget of around $45 million, significant controversy and hype surrounding the film's amount of sex and nudity preceded its theatrical release. In the United States, the film is rated NC-17 for nudity and erotic sexuality throughout, and some graphic language and sexual violence. Showgirls was first and to date the only NC-17 rated film to be given a wide release in mainstream theaters. Distributor United Artists dispatched several hundred staffers to theaters across North America playing Showgirls to ensure that patrons would not sneak into the theater from other films and to make sure filmgoers were over the age of 17. Audience restriction due to the NC-17 rating, coupled with poor reviews, resulted in the film becoming a box office bomb, grossing just $37 million. Despite negative theatrical and critical consensus, Showgirls enjoyed a success on the home video market, generating more than $100 million from video rentals, allowing the film to turn a profit and become one of MGM's top 20 all-time bestsellers. For its video premiere, Verhoeven prepared an R-rated cut for rental outlets that would not carry the NC-17 film rating. This edited version runs 3 minutes shorter at 128 minutes and deletes some of the more graphic footage. Showgirls was critical failure upon release, panned for its acting, particularly Berkley's, the characters, dance numbers, directing, plot, screenplay, and sex scenes, and consistently ranks as one of the worst films ever made. Despite this, Showgirls has become regarded as a cult film and has been subject to the critical re-evaluation, with some notable directors and critics considering it a serious satire worthy of praise. The cast includes Elizabeth Berkley as Nomi Malone, a young drifter who hitchhikes to Las Vegas, hoping to make it as a showgirl. MacLachlan as Zach Kerry, the entertainment director at the Stardust Casino. Gina Gershon as Crystal Connors, the diva star of the casino's topless dance review show, Goddess. Gina Ravera as Molly Abrams, a costume designer who takes Nomi in as a roommate and invites Nomi backstage at Goddess at the Stardust Casino where she works. Plummer as James Smith, an aspiring dancer who takes a romantic interest in Nomi. Robert Davi as Al Torres, the owner of the Cheetah Strip Club. And Rachins as Tony Moss, the director of the show Goddess. Leading writer on the film, Eszterhas came up with the idea for Showgirls while on vacation in his home in Maui, Hawaii. During a lunch in Beverly Hills, Verhoeven told Eszterhas that he'd always looked to do a big MGM musical and wanted to make one. Eszterhas suggested the setting of Las Vegas. Based on the idea he scripted on a napkin, Eszterhas was advanced $2 million to write the script and picked up an additional $1.7 million when the studio produced it into film. This, along with the scripts for both Verhoeven's previous film Basic Instinct in 1992 and Silver in 1993, also an erotic thriller starring Sharon Stone, made Eszterhas the highest-paid screenwriter in Hollywood history. Verhoeven deferred 70% of his $6 million director's fee, depending on if the film turned a profit. I wrote Showgirls at the single most turbulent moment in my life, said Eszterhas later. The stuff I've done since then has been more warm, more humor, and it's more upbeat. A long list of actresses were considered for the role of Nomi Malone, including Pamela Anderson, Drew Barrymore, Angelina Jolie, Vanessa Marcel, Jenna McCartney, Denise Richards, and Charlize Theron. But they all turned down the role before Elizabeth Berkley, following the cancellation of Saved by the Bell, signed on to play the role. Madonna, Sharon Stone, Sean Young, Daryl Hannah, and Finola Hughes, who allegedly turned down the script because she thought it was sexist, were considered for the role of Crystal Connors before Gina Gershon became available. MacLachlan says Dylan McDermott was the first choice for the character of Zach Kerry, but he declined and MacLachlan was then cast. Eszterhas and Verhoeven interviewed over 200 Las Vegas strippers and incorporated parts of their stories into the screenplay to show the amount of exploitation of strippers in Vegas. Eszterhas took out a full-page advertisement in Variety, which he dubbed the film of a morality tale and denouncing the advertising of the film as misguided. Also writing, the movie shows that dancers in Vegas are often victimized, humiliated, abused, verbally and physically, and raped by men who are at the power centers of the world. The film's stark poster was adapted from the photograph by Tony Sano. The photo had originally been featured on the cover of the 1994 book, The Body, Photographs of the Human Form. Gina Ravera said her rape scene was traumatic. She said, "When you do a scene like that, your body doesn't know it's not real." The scene took over 9 hours to film. The film was a winner of the then record 7 1995 Golden Raspberry Awards from a record 13 nominations, a record that still stands, including Worst Picture, Worst Actress for Berkley, Worst Director for Verhoeven, Worst Screenplay for Eszterhas, Worst New Star for Elizabeth Berkley, Worst Screen Couple, any combination of two people or two body parts, an original song by David A. Stewart and Terry Hall, Walk Into the Wind. Verhoeven gamely appeared in person at the Razzie ceremony to accept the award for Worst Director. Showgirls would later win an 8th Razzie Award for Worst Picture of the last decade in 2000. It was soon tied with Battlefield Earth for winning the most Razzies in a single year, a record broken when I Know You Killed Me won 8 trophies in 2008, and then again Jack and Jill won 10 in 2012. Due to Showgirls' poor reception, Striptease, a 1996 film about new dancers starring Demi Moore, was distanced from Showgirls in advertisements. Striptease nonetheless won the next year's Razzie Award for Worst Picture. Renee Rifle, who played Penny Hope in the Showgirls, was also cast in Striptease as Tiffany Glass. Unfortunately, after the film, Elizabeth Berkley was dropped by her then agent, Mike Menshaw. Other agents refused to take her telephone calls, and unfortunately her career has never reached these heights once again. The term Showgirls bad has been adopted by film critics, and fans refer to the films considered guilty pleasures or so bad they're good. A musical adaptation was run in 2013 in an on-off Broadway parody called Showgirls the Musical. Because of the film's critical and commercial failure, writer Eszterhas said, "Clearly we made mistakes. Clearly it was one of the biggest failures of our time. It failed commercially, critically, and it failed on videotape. It failed internationally. In retrospect, part of it was that Paul and I were coming off Basic Instinct, which defied the critics and was a huge success. Maybe there was a certain amount of hubris involved. We can do what we want to do. We can go as far as we want. That rape scene was a god-awful mistake. In retrospect, a terrible mistake. The music was forgettable, and in casting mistakes were also made." The film, though, has gone on to achieve cult status. MGM noticed the film was performing well with trendy 20-somethings who were throwing Showgirls irony parties, laughing at the impulsively poor screenplay and shrieking with horror at the aerobic sexual encounters. Showgirls is shown as a midnight movie alongside such films as The Rocky Horror Picture Show and The Adventures of Priscilla, Queen of the Desert. It is heralded as one of the best bad movies, a camp classic in the vein of Beyond the Valley of the Dolls. Now, where do I even begin to review a film like this? Firstly, the film is absolutely shocking. It's so bad that it's actually entertaining. It's ironic, isn't it? Elizabeth Berkley turns out one of the strangest, over-the-top performances I've ever seen. Her acting is just completely off point. She overacts almost in every scene. I think she had no clue who Naomi was supposed to be, and Paul Verhoeven's direction obviously must have been quite poor, as the actress just didn't know who she was portraying or what she was supposed to be portraying in every scene. As I said, it's so bad, it becomes hilariously funny. I sat there watching this movie, absolutely appalled by the erotic dance scenes that are just completely over the top, the sexual scenes which are just completely strange and unrealistic. The dialogue is so poor and misplaced, and the acting is just absolutely atrocious. But yet the movie keeps you interested, and it draws you in for some reason. And in some ways, there's a sort of message intertwined into all of this mess. It deals with the exploitation of sex workers, of dancers in a sexual show, and of course, the horrific rape scene, which, albeit completely shocking, is realistic of what actually happens in these places, and how these men with power get away with anything. I suppose when you view this film as a satire, that's when it sort of makes sense per se. I really do not believe Verhoeven or Eszterhas intended to make this film in that regard, but if you view it through those sort of lenses, then the film becomes a bit more enjoyable per se. I did find the film fascinating, and it really uses melodrama as an excellent vehicle for social criticism, particularly of women within society. I can see why the film maybe drew a lot of attention back in the day. It was highly controversial, highly sexualized, and very offbeat. But in the same breath, by today's standards, I would hardly even call this film highly sexualized. It's not a sexy film. It's not a very good film. But it does make some interesting points. And like I said, it does keep you interested because it's just so poorly made. I do feel sorry for Berkley as an actress, as her career just died after this. But in the same breath, though, she is so poor in this role that she really couldn't have maybe made much of a career for herself. Verhoeven has always been a fascinating director for me. He's made fantastic films like Basic Instinct and even The Black Book. But this film maybe was just one step too far, as they tried to be too bold, too different, and too sexual. Now, as a film, it is poorly made, poorly directed, and poorly acted, but it still holds your interest and finds a way to tell its story in a unique, fascinating, and somewhat insightful way. And therefore, Showgirls gets a 7 out of 10.